And welcome back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. How many episodes has it been, Thomas?
10, 11.
10,
I
11?
think it's 11.
I think there's been, and also just looking at the comments, just looking at the repeat offenders. Looking at the repeat offenders, I think there's a few of us that have been with us the whole time. And for those of you who have just come in for the first time, we welcome you. We welcome you, Dr. Lawrence and Brother Thomas Cotton. We welcome you to Inside Out, Exploring the Roads for Redemption. Again, this is another great episode that we're going to look at this evening. And again, my name is Dr. Lawrence, and I am the executive director and the founder of a nonprofit entitled A Bridge to Light, where we focus on enabling underserved communities to overcome obstacles that have traditionally hindered their progress, and also access to human needs with a particular focus on disrupting the school of prison pipeline and further enabling the formerly incarcerated persons to re-enter society. And it is my pleasure and honor to be joined with a genius, with a true friend, a true brother to humanity, our friend and brother, Mr. Thomas Cotton.
I appreciate the introduction. Genius is a high level. I'm going to strive for that one day. But I just want to say thank you all for joining us today. I'm Thomas Cotton, the founder and CEO of Redemption and Advancement Alliance, where our mission is to disrupt the cycles of incarceration. And we do that by focusing on the most important part of the process, the person. As we start thinking about the person, if we don't get that right, then everything they put their hands to will, won't lead to anything well. So what we think is you give a person a good job, good opportunities, good person to be with, and all these other opportunities, housing and everything. If they're not different, they'll blow them all up. So the most important part of the process is the people. So let us focus on people. So I'm grateful today that we get a chance to talk about different things. But before we talk about those things, we need to like, subscribe, share, get involved in the chat. Today's conversation is going to be huge. And I can't wait to get into this, Dr. Lawrence.
Here at Inside Out, the exploring the roads to redemption. Uh, we historically have looked at issues that may affect the reintegration of the formerly incarcerated persons, but we want to get before that. We want to get before that, and before I speak to that, Thomas mentioned just such a very, very important piece about the person. In special operations, uh, one of our soft imperatives, special operations force, SOF, soft imperatives, is that you can't mass produce people. You can mass produce stuff, tanks, airplanes, but a person, you can't mass produce a person. And each person, as I mentioned at the end of every show, every person and everything is an asset, a resource, an island. So how do we tailor make, or how do we understand that everyone is an island, and how do we tailor make um, treatment and approaches to specifically fit them, to re-enter society, or to do things in the most less obstructed manner. And tonight we're going to talk about just. I have the privilege, Thomas and I spoke, and I have the privilege of talking about A Bridge to Light, the organization that I just had the honor and privilege of being the founder and executive director. Just a few programs that allows us to facilitate, that those access to those human needs, the disruption of the school to prison pipeline, and further the reintegration of formerly incarcerated persons into society. Our grand vision, like if we had it our way, our grand vision is to transform environments of despair into thriving communities of holistic wellness. That's just not jobs. That's just not medical care or social or financial, but it's holistic. Again, everybody, everything is a resource and is important. This is what this is the aim. This is the aim of a bridge to light, and how we do programs specifically focused on reducing recidivism, reducing violence, increasing employment opportunities, increasing healthcare access or awareness, and increasing access to education. And when some people think about education, they may think of just formalized brick and mortar or virtual education. But I'm not. I'm as the founder and executive director of A Bridge to Light. I'm not really speaking to that. Yes, if that's what you like to do, absolutely, and we'll attempt to find the partnerships to facilitate that. But what are you good at? And whatever you're good at, we're going to try to make you the best, whatever you're good at, that you could be so you could be productive for not only you, but your family and your community. If you want to be a brick mason, if you want to be a plumber, if you have an interest in computers or social media, we're going to try to partner with the experts in the field to further enable you being the best you could be, and you can acquire, you can acquire what you envision yourself to be 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So Thomas, yeah, I can hear you thinking, Thomas.
Oh no, I'm just listening to what you're saying because bringing out the best in who you are is very important. A lot of times we let the narratives of life control who we are. And the
Yes, sir.
reality is there's something that's really good about you. And if you're allowed to, if you allow yourself to be taught in new areas of life, you know, this is a bridge to light, so to speak, because it creates that bridge to this newness of life. And that's what I was just thinking, that allowing a person, allowing themselves to be taught, to be coached, to get this information, and really walk that bridge to see a new life, to see a new light. And so I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah, man. And I tell you, just a few programs, because there's several programs that Bridgelight is currently involved with. We're going to talk about a few. And at the end, I'm going to tell you maybe the ink mark, the water spot, the watermark, which speaks to a few of these problems. And one of the programs that I've been privileged to host was the protection of womanhood panel discussion, and that was it's so illuminating. Just left East Stroudsburg University in Pennsylvania with a very diverse group. I had four men, excuse me, I had three men, four women. One male was a collegiate, and one female was a collegiate. And the intent of this panel discussion, the protection of womanhood panel discussion, is far too often we as men, black and white men, uh, will determine what's good for someone who is not a man, namely a woman, namely a black woman. So the intent of this panel discussion was to hear her voice, is to get her voice, hear how she defines security, how she defines safety, how she understands if there's a such thing, how social media, movies, media, the 24-hour news cycle, you name it, how it informs the way she sees herself, and the manner in which men see women. And there's various other questions in which we dive into, which which takes us very very deep, and is very very illuminating for for panel discussion. How I start off with this? Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just like agreeing.
Yeah, how I start off with violence. Violence is such a welcomed is such a welcomed aspect in our society nowadays. Let's think about that for a minute. Violence, the manner in which we receive violence, not necessarily through fists or through guns, but the manner in which we ingest violence through our ears or perceive it through our eyes. It makes it so receptive. It makes it so receptive because a definition that I use, the last words in that definition, and I spoke about that definition here, is maldevelopment and deprivation. So how do the music that we listen to, the movies that we watch, the 24-hour news cycle that we're drawn to, how does it facilitate a feeling of deprivation or maldevelopment? That's something we need to ponder. Go ahead, brother. Yes, sir.
No, I'm agreeing because I mean, what we let into our ears and our eyes and our mind, it
Yeah.
drives a lot of times what we
Right.
think about the world.
Right.
You know, and I for one, will just speak from a personal perspective. Gangster rap, we had a show about that, so go back and look at it. But gangster rap, in my days, literally dominated how I functioned.
Mm.
It either, you know, a lot of times we're looking for people to affirm us
Right.
in what we're doing, especially if we're doing wrong. And if we look at the music and the music has an affirming quality to what I'm doing, it'll allow me to feel comfortable in what I'm doing. And so, you know, listening to gangster rap and being involved with gangs and being involved with drug selling, that was a lot of the music I listened to.
Mm.
Today, today's day and age, we can look at people who are just out there wanting to do whatever they want to do, and they can find the music that aligns with them to affirm them in these spaces. And you got to be careful with that.
Right. Right. And just before that, though, take a step right before that, we had the Public Enemies, we had the Big Daddy Kanes, Bismarcky, dance party music,
Right.
Treacherous Three. Nothing overly violent or suggestive, just suggesting having a party.
Yeah.
Then you had the conscious rap after that, Poor Righteous Teachers. Again, Big Daddy Kane.
Yeah.
And just and rappers such as that. Then all of a sudden,
Boom.
in comes NWA.
Yeah.
In comes NWA and other like groups, which validated, which again, prior to that, we were, a very dance and social group. Then when the conscious rap, a lot of us start being more conscious as far as who you are, as far as a black and brown individual in America, and you investigated that because you heard these sounds, and it made you curious, so you went deeper into that. But
Yeah.
then in comes NWA and other rap groups. We just can't put it squarely on NWA and these brothers. God bless them. They just were rhyming about what they saw in their environment, their culture. And
Yeah.
I thank them for just allowing us, on the East Coast to see what was going on in the West Coast, because we know
You know,
we
it's
were different. Go ahead, sir.
interesting thing, and didn't mean to cut you off, but interesting about what you're saying right now, as far as how NWA and all this different rap, we look at how it was back then when people had the high top fades, the African medallions, and wearing them around, and the type of dress we had. If people don't think that music moves culture, it does.
Sure.
And when you talk about a culture, NWA came in and identified a way of life,
Yes, sir.
and it dominated to make it seem like that was the only way of life. And a lot of times, if you found yourself in these situations, you can relate to the music and you gravitated toward it. You
Right.
know, being from the West Coast myself, I didn't gravitate toward a lot of the rap. You know, when uh Busta Rhymes, the group he was with, I forgot the name of it.
Uh,
Uh
yeah, leaders of the new school.
Leaders of New School. And they came out, I was like, man, these silly soft suckers, you know. And and that's the way it was. But the reality was they flowed according to everything they knew. Their rap was tight. When I look back now, I could see now a bigger picture. Back then, when you have a limited mindset, limited scope, it changes the way you think of things. And when we talk about the protection of womanhood, which is what we're talking about today, you think about there was no protection for womanhood in that rap. The reality was they said whatever they wanted about black women. And and for me personally, I ate it up. I got hurt in a relationship, got hurt in a second relationship. And I thought, well, that's just probably the way it's going to be. So I need to just treat them like B's and O's, you know?
Mm.
And that's what the rap said. And it seemed like I got a better response out of that.
Mm.
The more I pushed away, the more they pulled toward me, and it was just like, oh yeah. And music kind of drove the lack of protection to me for womanhood in our communities. You know, when
Yeah.
we think about historically, Black women and women in general have been marginalized across various aspects of life at that point. You know, the violence, whether, you know, there's a lot of, if we start listening to music back then, there's a lot of things that were said about violence toward women, about different other things, you know, the educational women, the pay, how they are in relationships, how they matter. There's so many different areas. And so we have to look at the historical context of, you know, when it comes to music and how it frames society, and how it also framed the lack of protection for womanhood.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Great. You know, again, that the stories we were listening to actually framed and encouraged the stories that we told ourselves about ourselves. I'm a gangster, and the environment in which we lived in. So we have to be very, very careful on what we feed on through our eyes and our ears. Yes, our mouth. That's the obvious piece. However, how are we feeding? How are we eating? How are we consuming the world around us? Because it's going to have an effect on who we are. And with that, you know, with the protection of womanhood panel discussion, I'm not just here to entertain. I'm not just here to, you know, I've been to Tampa, I've been to New Orleans, been to East Stroudsburg. The next stop will be Dallas, Texas, and possibly Las Vegas, Atlanta, you name it. But with that, I'm not here to entertain. I'm not here just to have a spirited conversation. I'm actually listening. I'm actually listening and collecting data because we have a responsibility to train our communities. Some of our communities don't even know how to protect themselves, let alone, you know, the women, the most precious commodity within that society or in that community. So my intention is to create a training module, a book, or videos to extract it from the themes that came out of all these visits, these discussions, to make our communities more safe and decent places to live.
I think
Along with
awareness is important for that
that,
standpoint, and what you're creating is really good. You brought up a topic earlier, something, and I was like, that's so good. The left of the boom. Talk about that, because this sounds like one of those left of the boom kind of moments.
yeah. Left of the boom. Left of the boom was a phrase that we should use in the military. The boom, as you read from left to right, you know. So how do we get to the left of the actual incident, like the actual event? You know, a shooting, an explosion, an event. Well, things that make up that event. You know, there's probably a system which makes up, say, a bomb maker or or assault, you know, or you know, some type of enemy. So there's a system which supports that event. So how do we get to the left of the boom? How do we get to the left of that and dissect, take away critical parts and pieces of that system, so the system won't, it's not allowed to manifest to the boom. So how are we having that mindset now, Brother Thomas? How are we saying we're going to try to we're going to try to reverse engineer and make our communities more safe and decent place to live, or we're going to get left to the boom as far as these are disastrous communities. So how do we get to left to the boom so it won't get there? Protection of womanhood. How do we protect the women? How do we understand intimate partner violence, which I had a unique opportunity last weekend at East Stroudsburg University to speak to a large group of men, about intimate partner violence. That's another word for domestic violence. So that's one area. Education, information. For example, we just mentioned music, movies, and the media has had an impact on what we've done and what we're currently doing. So how does education, as far as the protection of womanhood, and IPV, domestic violence discussions, and other discussions influence our behavior as well. How do we do that? How do we reverse engineer it from something that's negative to positive? And along the theme of protection of womanhood, with respect to domestic violence and just creating the proper mindset when one finds themselves in a domestic violent or a intimate partner violence environment, how do they get the mindset to leave? To leave. First of all, again, we have to understand what violence is because intimate partner violence can come in many, many forms and fashion. So when we think about it, we think of maybe physical abuse, the hands, but there's financial abuse, there's neglect, there's psychological abuse, there's sexual abuse. So there's many forms of violence that could take place between intimate partners. So also, Thomas, what I found interesting was gaslighting. Gaslighting and intimate partner violence. And some of us said, well, I've heard that phrase gaslighting before. Well, what is that? Well, Gaslight was a movie like back in the 40s. And this man, he used to hide things around the house, and the wife would see like things moved. And she thought she was going crazy because she was like, wait, I thought the control was there, now it's over here, and it's over. So it's how do we use and we all have done it. We all have gaslighted people before, unintentionally, possibly. We've always said something to affect one's psychological being. Like, for example, in intimate partner violence, well, I didn't push you that hard. Oh, why are you crying? It's not that bad. Why do you feel that way? So phrases like this is it appears to be very subtle, but it can have the individual that is experiencing the trauma to question them, saying, you know what, we know what, he really didn't hit me that hard, or he hit me because I did, have his dinner was cold. So we have to watch the gaslighting, not necessarily with intimate partner violence, but gaslighting. Period. Man, you crazy.
Right.
So it's just very, very common. It's very, very common. So we have to be very, very careful with that. Also, during the IPV, I spoke to the holiday season in IPV. Holiday season is very joyous, but that's historically speaking the time period which we drink the most alcohol, do the most dope, and there's violence, just interpersonal violence between men and men, let alone
Right.
men and women during festive, holy seasons. There's a lot of violence, depression, memories. Like people don't have the money they want to have during that period, and they may strike out to the person that's nearest to them.
Yeah. You also have the most harmful memories around, the family times and different other
Mm.
things. And, I just wanted to back up just a little bit because when you talked about, left of the boom and how you stopped the event from happening over here, like a lot of the conversations you're having, that educational part, the way of helping people to understand these things can also empower them. The other part of that education is emotional intelligence. A
Yes,
lot
sir.
of times we lack the emotional intelligence to see that our actions, our gaslighting, and other things are the manifestation of this inequality when it comes to women, when it comes to a lot of the way things are. So we have to begin to see um, that when it comes to protection of the women, what are some of the gaps that need to be filled in? And I look at the conversations you're having and the things that you're learning, the listening that's going on is also important because a lot of times we don't listen. We can look at let's just look at the racism conversation that's going on today's age, and a lot of times you have people of one race saying, "Hey, all these things are happening to us," and you have another side that's like, "Nah, that's not really happening. You need to get over it. You need to let things go. That's not the way things are today." Well, that conversation is going on with women also, and in
Mm-hmm.
this education we have to learn to step back and listen to the way things are with women and begin to have some intelligence around it, to begin to understand instead of trying to be understood. We're so busy trying to talk into it that we're not listening to a lot of what they're saying. Whether or not I agree with what a woman's telling me, I have every intention on listening because my disagreement doesn't make what they're saying invalid. And what I mean by that is if someone feels a certain kind of way, that's truly how they feel.
Right.
And it's not up to me to fix how they feel or invalidate how they feel.
That's right.
It's up to me to listen to how they feel and then understand from a different standpoint. It's up to them to figure out whether or not what they feel is correct or not. But a lot of times we immediately get into the space of invalidating women, invalidating their concerns, invalidating their walk in life and the things that they have to deal with. And it really creates a division versus bringing things together. And I think it's important that we begin to understand more of what they're going through.
That's right.
I'm gonna say this real quick because it's
Yes.
where I got my understanding about the true value of a woman. Told you
Mm,
gangster rap really uh, led in my way of thinking as an adolescent and how I thought about women because I was indoctrinated. This is the way it was. This is the way I thought it was going to be.
wow.
And then I went to prison and I'm around thousands of men every single day. And the majority of the conversations I heard were about women. These men talking about women, whether it's my woman left me, I can't believe, I left my woman, I miss my woman, I can't wait to get to a woman. Whatever the conversation was, it was always wrapped around women. And I had to take a step back because remember, I was indoctrinated by music. And the music told me one thing. But what I experienced in life made me had to challenge myself. I've watched all these men talk about women, not as if they were sitting right there in their face, but the essence of a woman and the
Wow.
value that they bring to life and how important they were to everything that was going on. And I started saying to myself, man, I've been lied to all this time about how important women are and how we need to start looking differently at women and how this protection of women that you're talking about is so important because we can't continue with the historical narrative of women when we have to start seeing that there's a true value that needs to be protected.
That's right. Hey, brother. Look, first of all, we've been going for it. We ain't told y'all to like, share, subscribe, engage. We ain't told y'all none of that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? We just lost our total bearing, and we apologize, dear family. But we want you to share, subscribe, and engage. Engage because this is a very broad topic. The protection of womanhood is miles wide. And by no means does Thomas Cotton and I, two black males, we can't begin to even pretend that we know everything about
Right.
this. But we as a community, as a diverse and inclusive community that can see the problem through various silos and various angles, we can help because the problem is always shifting. That's the problem with problems.
Yeah.
And that's what I told a group this week here, Thomas. I said, uh, the problem is for a group to agree what the problem is. Sometimes we don't know what the problem is. We know there's a problem, but we have 15 people and they're ready to go and they're ready to problem solve. Okay, I write down this is the problem. And Thomas said, hold on, I don't think that's the problem. I think this is the problem. Now we have to negotiate. We have to come to a consensus that all 15 folks, we're all right.
Right.
Well, how are we best right through consensus? So, yes, I hosted a panel discussion. I led a discussion with respect to intimate partner violence and being on a college campus. And let's just have total transparency this evening. Um, college campuses is where a lot of sexual activity takes place. This is so for some it's there first, and sometimes very unique situations happen because of just the environment one may find themselves, and in an environment and sex is involved. So I think it was my duty to talk to the young men about my dissertation. My dissertation entitled "A Silent Dilemma: The Challenges Black Collegiate Women Face Disclosing Sexual Victimization." And with that, some folks just based on the music, the media, you know, laws and so forth, and policies, they don't even know that they're committing a sexually harassing and or sexual assault activity. They don't even know it until the long arm of the law come and grab you and jerk you out of class one day because she is told, and she has every right to do so. But how are black and brown men having, creating a degree of compassion based on what I've discussed in my dissertation, created a degree of compassion to facilitate environments where, we as, underserved people could come to each other and tell and disclose very unique problems. And what formed the watermark in this study was her, as Thomas mentioned, we're not listening. We're not listening to people. We hear everything. I'm sure Thomas can hear certain things going on, and I'm hearing certain things going on thousands of miles away from each other, but we're listening to each other right now. So how are we listening to each other? And what was key during my dissertation was meeting the research participant where they were at, physically, emotionally, socially, and so forth, and acquiring through patience and artful and not only a scientific way. What's this question? What's that? Question answer. No, but understanding the sensitivities and exercising some emotional intelligence and patience to attempt to draw out the lived experiences that that form the barrier between them and disclosing sexual victimization. So I imparted that to these young men. And Thomas, I tell you, the bottom line to all of this, the panel discussion, the IPV discussion, and infant partner violence discussion, and the silent dilemma discussion. The bottom line to all of this is complex problems demand diverse and inclusive groups to look at it, examine it, and give unique answers. Just giving simplified, overly simplified answers. Why? Well, if she was raped, why don't she just tell? Well, if she or he gets beat up, why don't they just leave? It's not that simple.
Right.
It's not that simple. So
Yes.
yes, sir. Go ahead.
When you think about all the statistics that are out there by IPV, a lot of different things. We have same-sex couples now. We have, hetero couples, and the statistics are different across the board for all of them. But when I look at these statistics, when it comes to IPV and DV and how people approach this work and even this topic, you see the statistics, you see the numbers. What you don't see is the silence behind a lot of this, where people are not reporting. Like those numbers are probably way higher, especially when it comes to
Sure.
uh, IPV against a male.
Right.
So if I'm in a relationship and I'm getting verbally assaulted, there's different types of assaults taking place. More than likely, as a male, I'm not going to report it. Just won't.
Right. Right.
And a lot of times we have to understand that the gaslighting aspect of things, that's not going to be reported. There's a lot of different things that won't be reported. The main thing is to try to understand these topics that, especially the ones Dr. Lawrence is bringing up right now about the protection of a woman, and find out ways that you can become educated in these areas, how you
Yeah.
can promote this type of education, where you can connect with this type of education, because We know the disparities exist. We know the violence exists.
That's
We
right.
know there's so many things that happen when it comes to the lack of protections, that
Right.
we can be the change for the protections. And what you're sharing right now is a great way to start that conversation.
As you and I spoke about, we have to get comfortable as a community, as a diverse community, of having uncomfortable conversations. You know, and not to the point where people yell and screaming and using profane language, profanity, but understand that let's have a civilized conversation, facts based. Now, based on that, here's my assumption. Okay, then we can move it further, but not just just a lot of just my feelings. But in some situations, one just airing their feelings is the truth based on their worldview. So it's the truth. As a black woman, maybe it's not collected statistically and put it in a table and so forth and published, but based on her unique worldview from Montgomery, Alabama, and she lives on this block in this educational system, her worldview is absolutely correct. And we have to respect that. You just can't say no, 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 no. We have to get to the, and I'm training myself post 50. I'm training myself to get beyond the yes but and get to the yes and. The yes but is very transactional. The yes and gets to the transformative piece, and we continue the conversation. And with that, your statistic is for every one black woman that attends college who has reported sexual victimization, 15, 15 have not disclosed the occurrence to law enforcement or health service officials. So
Wow.
for every one black woman that attended college that has reported, there are 15 that haven't. And there's thousands, tens of thousands of black women going to college nowadays. Wow. Yeah. So tonight's show was just designed to get beyond the simplified answers and help us think more critically when we look at what appears to be a simple question or problem. Go ahead, Thomas. My apologies. I cut you off, man.
No, you're good. I'm literally just listening to you, um, and just letting that marinate for a second. For every one that reports, 15 don't, and there's a reason why 15 don't. And I think it's because just the way we are in society.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times growing up, I had the good common sense to understand no means no.
Right.
Like we get to one, we could be almost to the full event. You say no, I'm done.
Yeah, that's right. Put it away.
I'm done.
Put it away.
And a lot of times in this society we live in right now, we want to justify actions. So we have excuses and defenses that try to justify actions when there is no justification. The way to justify yourself is to control yourself. And I think that when I think of that statistic, you know, for every one, 15 don't report. I think it goes both ways. Control needs to be on the male side, and women start to have to recognize you don't have to go to limits for people to like you. I'm not saying
Mm.
that's the only reason why they go there. I'm not saying that. So, but what I am saying is for those who decide to go to that point and decide that, you know, that's not where I was going with this, and you're taking it way too far, some of that protection needs to be on you. And responsibility is in everybody's hands, not just one-sided. When I got arrested, I took responsibility that everything that happened to me after that point was on me. Because if I never did this, this can never happen.
Mm.
And sometimes we got to quit towing the line of, if someone isn't your type, don't play with them. Don't try to use them for a meal. I'm not saying that's what you're doing. This is just one instance of thousands. I'm not simplifying. What we don't do on this show is simplify things. I'm just talking in generalities. And so protection happens both ways, but we also have to educate ourselves on what that protection looks like. I'm going to keep coming back to that.
That's right. That's right. And again, we're forcing ourselves. I'm forcing myself as I'm speaking to think, continue to think, and not be boxed into what was taught to me or whatever the case may be. Because what has what's written, what has affected disclosure is maybe systematic racism as far as structures and systems and relationships that were historically never designed to support Black women who were sexually assaulted. They were designed to support white women. Okay, believability issues because at one point in time they felt that during Jim Crow and during prior to Jim Crow, Black women were insatiable, so therefore they can't be raped. Their threshold of their tolerance for pain and was different than anyone else. Therefore, you had certain medical experimentations on Black women that no one has ever experienced in the world but her. Self-blame issues, distrust in white-led medical agencies, as I mentioned, as far as the medical, historically the medical boards and so forth, and a perceived duty to protect Black men. A perceived duty to protect Black men that has been from the Willie Lynch to now. If you know what Willie Lynch is, it's about maybe a 42-page book, very easy read, and that will be that's probably something we need to talk about in a later podcast as far as the Willie Lynch and its effects on uh, just the school of prison pipeline and on the reentry of formerly incarcerated persons and so forth.
Mhm.
But I think we've given it. It's been 40 minutes.
Yeah,
I think we've
this
given
would be
everybody
good.
to chew on. So
Exactly, and hopefully they do take it back and they start thinking about the and acknowledge that we have a collective responsibility to advocate for the protection and empowerment of women,
yes,
and
ma'am.
that's where this you
Yes, sir.
know I don't think we're done. I think we
Yes,
have a few more shows with this, and we're taking our responsibility to advocate for this protection. And I think
yes,
others should jump in with that.
yes, sir. During this very unique episode, and thank you, Thomas, for allowing me the opportunity just to talk about some of the things that Bridge Light is doing. That's just a few things. And just like Thomas's organization, we are all over the place. Our job is to do our part to raise humanity, 1 inch at a time. So
Hmm.
tonight we talked about the panel discussion as far as protecting womanhood. We talked about the intimate partner violence discussion and the silent dilemma, the challenges Black collegiate women face, disclosure, sexual victimization. So if you can see my website right there on the screen, if you want to have more questions for me or Thomas, please contact us. We're always ready to have a discussion with you. But like always, here at a British Light, we believe that everyone and everything is a resource, an asset, an island, something precious that God tailor made for the world. We believe that it takes a network of progression to defeat a network of oppression. So let's make the net work.
I love that. And here at Redemption Advancement Alliance, we believe that as long as a person has a heartbeat, there's an opportunity for redemption. So let us not always judge people according to where they are, but let us see people to where they can be. Let us know that we're progressing this life forward for all. We don't know the challenges or the situations that people have gone through, but as long as they're still breathing, as long as they have a heartbeat, they're redeemable.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. Again, like, share, subscribe, engage. We're standing by. See you next week with another great episode of Inside Out, exploring the roads for redemption. Good night.